This is the Living in Mid-Bloom podcast, lighthearted and heartfelt conversations about what it looks like to live, heal, and blossom in middle age. I'm your host, April Pruitt. Let's get our bloom on. In this episode, I talk about emotional difficulties and lack of self-care. Please do not listen if you believe any of these subjects may trigger you. The content of this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek guidance from your healthcare professional. Please be advised that this interview was recorded 2 months prior to my TIA. Hello, mid-bloomers. Hope you're having a great day. I have a beautiful guest here. Her name is Petra van Deijl. Petra is an international life coach and breathwork practitioner and advocate for survivors of narcissistic and emotional abuse. You know, that's so specific. Was there something in your life that caused you to make this ultimate focus?
Oh, absolutely, April. It's, I never knew what narcissism was. I mean, of course, you hear it in the media and you hear it around you, but I never knew what it was.
And I'm not sure if I know what it is, other than I always felt like I have narcissistic people in my family.
Right.
And to me, that meant everything was about them. And yes. I was just kind of trying to get my attention. And when you're younger, when you're a child, you accept what's happening because you don't know anything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, when we don't know, we take it for granted. Well, this is just the way it is.
Right.
Without questioning anything, but also feeling in our gut that some things are just off course, toxic, and just not okay, out of order. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say there are a lot of people that don't recognize what's happening because they're so used to it. Tell me, how did you get started in this?
Well, I have been a life coach for the past, oh my goodness, it's going on 20 years now.
Wow.
And I was involved from the time I was 18. Looking back, I was involved with very many toxic people, not realizing it at the time, or possibly realizing it, but not knowing that there was a name, a label that could be given to such people. So It was a first boyfriend, and that relationship went on for 8 years. And in the course of my life, up until the time I was 45, 46, I was involved with very many toxic friends, women friends.
Okay.
It was the last friend who was so toxic in my life, who was such a destructive factor. And at some point she said to me, "You need to get over yourself, you filthy narcissist." And I thought, that's interesting. What does she mean? What is a narcissist?
Right.
And so started my journey of gathering knowledge, getting on the internet, looking for information, because narcissist, the first definition that came to mind was someone who's just, full of themselves, has this inflated ego. And I thought, wow, maybe I do have a big ego at times, but let me look into this.
Yeah.
And so started my journey.
Oh, so this good old narcissist friend got you on the road of curiosity.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was when I discovered everything that I read on narcissism, and there wasn't a whole lot back then. We're talking 8 years ago now. But when I started reading into it, reading the definitions, the traits, the parts of the character, I thought, oh my goodness, check. That was this friend that had named me a narcissist. And it was all the friends before that, and the boyfriend that I had when I was 18. So they ticked all the boxes.
One thing I always thought about too was, how do I attract these people? Before I started figuring things out,
Right.
Why are these people in my life? What is it about me that would draw that type of relationship.
And I think when you say attract, yes, it is the energy that one puts off. And this is what toxic people are attracted to. And the energy could be people pleasing, being very soft, being kind hearted, not having healthy boundaries set in place.
Yes.
Giving your all at the expense of your own dignity, your own peace of mind. And that is the attraction. That is what narcissists love, because they can mold you, manipulate you, brainwash you.
Like you said, the vibration, they can pick up the fact that, okay, here is someone that I believe I can control and give me the relationship that I want from them.
Absolutely. Yes.
I've had several narcissists in my life. A lot of them are family members. And there's a real struggle with, these are people you love, but yet you feel like, why am I not being treated the way I think I should? And then you may bring it to their attention, just having a chat, and you're basically just like, what are you talking about? I don't even understand what that is.
Yes.
You're turned down, and then it's, well, I don't want to harm my relationship, so I'll just, I'll go along. And that lasted for most of my life until I made the decision not to be used anymore.
Wow.
And then that relationship ended.
Wow. That is huge, April. The fact that you said, I made a decision to stop tolerating this kind of behavior. That's the key right there.
Thank you.
I'm not saying it's an easy journey, but that is the key. Making an upfront decision and choice not to tolerate that kind of toxic behavior.
I had been seeing therapists on and off most of my life. I'm a professional patient. But I kept rolling along because, again, I was very curious how people act. And within my own family, trying to figure out, okay, so that's not good behavior. What is good behavior? I didn't know how to be.
No.
So you just start searching and looking, and you also have to be prepared mentally to accept what's in front of you and be willing to make a change. I know one of my therapists, and I'm sure, people have said this to me before, but I think I was prepared because I had been doing this work. And he said, this particular person is manipulating you. And it felt like a shock, but I think I was ready to hear it and the painful truth about what's happening.
Right.
So I was grateful for that. And I currently work with a spiritual coach. And I've said this before on a previous show. She had said, as we're working, and she's just thinking out loud, she's like, you really like being miserable. She's like, I've come to this conclusion. And I just fell out laughing because I was always looking at half empty.
Right.
It's just, I'm grateful that I've been given the strength to be curious and look through things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And being given a wake-up call by such a simple sentence, you really like being miserable. That's amazing because it's, it's true. And it takes someone who has the guts to say it to us. I know that I went through this in order to just give us a wake-up call and say, well, look at what you're doing, just wallowing in misery. And that's not to disrespect people who have been traumatized, who have been through a narcissistic abuse. But it does take waking up to say, I have my own life and I can take leadership in my own life.
Yeah.
It's not depending on others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been many times when I'll say something or I'm really firm on something and I can tell she's like, I'm like, okay, what? What did I? And we just kind of talk and I get annoyed. Then I have to think about it. Then it's like, okay, you're right. I'm sorry I got mad. And she's like, what are you sorry for? We're working through stuff.
Yeah. That's the truth. Yeah.
Tell me, when did you actually start doing this work and what were you doing prior?
Well, I've had a very delicious tapestry of different jobs and careers. I've done everything from cleaning hotel rooms to working at an embassy in Sweden.
Oh, wow.
I was an office manager for very many years, but I knew there was a calling. I felt it from a very young age, and I never wanted to pay attention. And the calling was to help others, but I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew I wanted to do it. So in 2003, yeah, that's 20 years ago now, I started my coaching practice. And I first did wellness coaching. I did business coaching. I did all kinds of coaching, but it was not, I felt that I wasn't where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that was, I would say, 15 years into my practice, 13 years maybe. And then, of course, this thing with this last toxic friend happened. And I was so distraught. I was so upset and saddened by the breaking off of that friendship that I decided to just make a video on my telephone. And I thought, I have a YouTube channel that I haven't used for years. I'm just going to put this video out there and see if maybe there's a few other people who have been through a similar experience and if they can help me with answers. And that is where it started.
Wow.
So people started responding to that video and saying, I went through it with a friend, with an ex-lover, with a parent. Oh, I went through it at work. And so started this beautiful communication between first hundreds and then thousands of people who had been through very similar experiences. And it took off from there, where I thought, let me make another video, another video, another video. And I think now I'm up to 500 videos or so. It was just so, for me, heartwarming that people who reached out, strangers on internet, and confirmed what I had been through, and then we sort of got this dialogue going, was to me very healing. Absolutely.
Everybody wants to be seen and heard. There's no question about that.
Oh, yes.
And when you were out there being vulnerable, people respond to that honesty, vulnerability, and say, well, she did that. I can at least acknowledge that I understand that.
That is so true.
I'm not alone. It's like, oh, wow.
Yes.
Somebody else can really speak to that as well. So
absolutely.
The relationship with this woman, do you think it was a codependent relationship? And did it just end after that confrontation, or after she made that statement? It was like she was in charge and made that decision because you were no longer going to cooperate with her behavior.
Yes. It was, in hindsight, April, it was a very codependent relationship. I remember another friend saying to me when I'd come out of that friendship, she said, you were never visible. You were always in the background with this friend. You were always in a corner. You were always in the shadows. And I thought, that's not true. But when I reviewed that whole friendship, which lasted about 7 years, I thought, wow, this very healthy friend of mine was absolutely right. I was very codependent in this friendship where everything that she said, that's what we did. That's what we followed. That's what I followed. And always was one step behind her while she stood in the light, so to speak. So, yes, it was, when I realized that I still had so many doubts when I thought, well, she ticks all the boxes of narcissism, but, so you have that self-doubt, as every victim of abuse, narcissistic abuse knows, is that there's so much self-doubt. So I ended that friendship because I just had enough. I was done, but still holding hope that we could reconcile at some point, because I missed her as a friend, as a sister friend.
Of course.
But there was no hope.
This is someone you loved.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the other part of it. If everything is all black and white, oh, that would be easy.
So easy.
But that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
It's hurtful.
It is. Extremely. Yes.
Just so I understand and the listeners understand, what does it mean to be a narcissist, and just some examples of behavior? Because again, I know when you're in it, it's hard to see what's happening.
Yes.
But clearly you got to a point, one, when you have a healthy friend who's honest enough and brave enough to tell you that.
Right,
She's
right.
seeing you being treated unfairly, and
Unfairly,
it's
yes.
cruel. I think it's cruel too.
It's very cruel,
Yeah,
yeah.
you make the decision to treat someone like that. But
Mm-hmm.
give us some kind of definition and then just some examples so
Right,
people know what to look for or find out that they are in
right,
that type of relationship.
yeah. I think, if you look at the classic textbook definition of narcissism, it is a pattern. Because we all, at some point in our lives, we all display toxic behavior given whatever situation we're in. But when you realize that there is a pattern, that everything is done the same way at the same time, and that you especially feel fear, feel a lot of anxiety, feel uncomfortable, feel like the other shoe's going to drop, there's something going on, but you cannot put your finger on it. That is to describe a very toxic relationship, because it is not normal for you to feel unsafe, unheard, invisible, and filled with anxiety and fear most of the time. I think that is a huge signal, is that to just warn people to watch and listen, pay attention to what their bodies are telling them. It's that
Yeah.
feeling. You cannot explain it. You go to someone and say, I was in a narcissistic relationship. Someone who's never been through it, they'll say, well, yeah, so get over it. But it's the feelings involved. The feelings. You
Yeah.
don't know how to communicate those feelings to someone else. So it's a pattern of very toxic behavior where you're told, one of them being gaslighting, for example. If you say, well, the sky is very blue today, and the narcissist says, no, it's absolutely dark, it's going to rain. And you're thinking, well, the sun's shining, it's beautiful. No, no, no.
Right.
There's a whole lot of clouds outside.
Wow.
That makes you start to doubt yourself. And this is just a very simple example of what gaslighting is. But it can
Yeah.
really drive you crazy. You think you're going crazy, and you doubt every single aspect of yourself.
You no longer trust yourself.
You don't trust yourself. No. And, I think a second very important one is realizing that someone is controlling you. You feel like a puppet on a string. They're controlling your feelings, your emotions, how you show up, how you function. So when there's control and manipulation, that is toxic. May not mean that they're narcissist or that they're diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder, but it does mean that it's very toxic. Steer clear of these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about this, when you've grown up, and I have past childhood trauma,
Yes.
how when you're people pleasing, you're so used to being in that role.
Oh, yes.
And also when you're not being present. That's the other thing, because if you're not being present, you'll never see what's happening because you've chosen to not participate in your own life.
Yes. Yeah. And not being present, this is especially growing up in a dysfunctional home. A child has no power to save themselves from that situation. So what do is that they check out of the present moment, go into fantasy land, or just be involved with their thoughts, and they remove themselves to keep themselves safe. They emotionally remove themselves from the situation whenever they can, whenever it's safe to do so. So there is no shaming or blaming for people who are not present in that moment. It's when you do become aware and conscious of what you're going through, that is when it is so important to stay in the present moment as much as possible, so as to get yourself out physically and emotionally. Yes.
And I know there are different levels of being present. I have a cousin.
Oh, yeah.
I always tell her, I'm like, you are fully present and accounted for. I said, I don't want to be present right now. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's good for me to see that. That's something I love about her, is that she can't help but do that because,
Right.
we both had tough issues with our families.
Yeah.
So it's also nice to have someone who takes responsibility for who they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where are you from?
Where I'm originally from? Well, I was born in Zimbabwe, formerly known as Rhodesia, to a Dutch father and Zimbabwean mother.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I
So,
love that.
yeah, it's I had an amazing childhood growing up in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
We moved to the Netherlands, to my father's country, when I was 13. So we're talking, oh my goodness, I'm 50
Okay.
now. So we're talking
Yeah.
back in 1986. Yeah. So I'm
No, that's really
currently
interesting.
in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. Do you have siblings?
I do have siblings. Yes. I had an older sister who sadly passed away when I was 14.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. She was a wonderful, wonderful sister. Yes. And so I was second. I miss her the most because I remember her the most. After me came a third sister, and then we had a baby, a very late baby, my brother. So there were four
Okay.
of us originally, and now three, and we're all living in close vicinity to each other. So we're all in the Netherlands.
Oh, that's
Yes.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, you want your family close. I know there are times when I did not want my family close and I moved across the country.
Right, right. Yeah.
It's interesting when I think about my people pleasing and not really living consciously
Mm,
and being away from my family, of course, I couldn't really do any work or even know that there was work to be done.
right.
I would be in therapy, absolutely clueless. You
Mm,
talked about kind of when you're not present, and I was diagnosed with dissociative amnesia.
mm.
I figured out my abuse probably about 12 years ago.
Wow.
I had terrible dreams most of my life. And in the dream, I was a perpetrator. And I thought, oh my God, I am deeply, deeply disturbed. What is wrong with me that
Yes.
I mean, it was awful. I felt so much shame. And I never talked to a therapist about it because if all I can say I'm having these nightmares, why would I?
Mm,
Being unaware of the abuse. So
right.
when that was confirmed, because I knew enough, and I had reached out to a family member when I was like 10. And when I went back to them to say, do you remember?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, because they didn't know, but they did wonder, why would I ask certain questions?
Right.
And
Right.
it was confirmed. So, for the past 12 years, it's really been a real conscious journey
Yes.
of survival and wanting to share that journey with others, just like you did, because you know how it can be so isolating.
Oh,
And I'm
absolutely.
sure I'm thinking about your friend that perhaps tried to isolate you from other people.
Definitely.
I know that's part of what it is.
Right.
So,
Yes, the isolation. Absolutely.
so how did you build up doing these videos? How did you get everything in place to do that?
Mm. In the beginning, I was still so hurting from coming out of this friendship. I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of doubt. And I just really used the videos in the beginning to just speak my pain, just speak it.
Okay.
And then I would go and check on Google and think, okay, I'm speaking on this topic. What is it called? What is the terminology? And then I would get all the terms, the gaslighting, the future faking,
Hmm.
the isolation. And then I could put a label to it and then explain in more detail. So it was really just speaking my pain, I would say, for maybe the first 20 videos. And then I started, of course, doing more and more research and putting all the pieces of the puzzle together so that I could then not only speak from pain, but also make
Mm.
informative videos on this subject. So it has just naturally evolved. I didn't have a plan when I started doing this. I did get to a point where I thought, well, I do have a practice. I'm a life coach. I've been practicing for many years. Why not incorporate this into the practice and then focus specifically on healing from narcissistic abuse? And that's how things just sort of came together. And that's when I felt, this is it. The purpose that I've been feeling from a very young age, this is it. Only I didn't know way back then. I had to go through all the trials, tribulations, challenges, suicidal thoughts to get to where I was at that time and to where I am now. Yeah, it's been a journey, an amazing journey.
That's incredible, because when you think about the fact that, okay, this friendship has ended, maybe having that friendship was a gift in a way to get you to your passion.
Oh, yeah.
And having the strength to just go out and speak your pain on a video. I'm thinking about that. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, because you don't know how people will respond. People are crazy. I mean,
people are absolutely crazy on the net. Absolutely. Yeah. But there are also so many great people out there.
Yes, that is true. That's what I find too, that most people, they want to be happy. They want to be in good relationships.
Yes.
And I think the people that don't even understand what that is are the ones that are struggling and are in pain and inflict pain on others. So
that is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, how does your practice work with your clients? Are they via Zoom, or are there people in person? I mean, there must be people all around the world that you're working with or have learned about and created relationships with, because again, your message is so universal and so important. I'm just curious how that process kind of happened.
Right. I did start off in the beginning where I used to receive clients in my practice, physically receive them. But I have an autistic daughter, which we didn't know at the time, but now we're very clear on that. And she couldn't take all the different, as she called them, all the different energies moving through the house. So I made a decision to go online with it. And I was very nervous about that, because I thought, who wants to get online and talk to someone that they cannot physically see in real time? But I decided to take that risk. And at that time, I was always also getting emails from clients from the US, from the UK, from Asia, from all over the world, saying, can we book a session with you? Wow. And I thought, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to do that? Don't know how this works. I'm not technical. So I was in a state of panic. Yeah. But I thought, well, let's just give it a go. And I remember using my phone to do coaching, very tiny phone. I have a bit of a larger phone now, but I had a very tiny one. And I would do all the coaching sessions on that device for the first 2 or 3 years. Until I thought, no, let me get a laptop. Let me get a microphone. Let me just sort of kind of appear professional. So, yeah, and it took off from there. So we have, there's the Zoom meetings. I do breathwork classes on Zoom where the class is full. And I just think it's so wonderful to see all these people from around the world gathering in one space. So that is really the process. I do one-to-one coaching. I do group sessions, still do the videos online. And I still do my own booking. I don't hire anyone to do that. I do all the bookings and the billings and all of that.
You're staying humble.
So I'm staying humble. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thinking about, your daughter and the fact that she was able to tell you how that was affecting her.
Right.
That's huge.
Right.
I mean, and I don't know what level of autism, and, I could never speak to that. But the fact that she was able to communicate that to you, and you realized, okay, I've got to make some changes here. And that may have ended up opening more doors. You never know.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for saying that, April, because that's exactly what happened. It opened up so many doors by listening to her and realizing, well, she cannot handle this, because she's at a level of autism where every bit of energy she feels it. We may feel it at level 2. She feels it at level 100. So I had to take heed of that and make the changes. And it has opened up just so much in being able to build relationships. That's what I love about the work that I do, is that it's building relationships with people that are strangers on a first call, and then really become it's like a friendship that evolves from that, which makes it so much easier to get into the work together. So I feel so honored that people trust me enough to walk a part of their journey with them. Yeah.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's your own work. You're doing it on your own, and it's huge, but they do allow me to walk a part of the journey. So I'm so appreciative of that. Yes.
Well, and building a trust with you. I know that in my therapy journey, there are so many people that, disappointed because I realized they still have work to do.
Right. Absolutely.
On part 2 of my interview with Petra, we discuss how she became involved in breath work. We also talk about personal experience of holding trauma in the body and how it can make you ill. And we also look at the mind, body, and spirit connection. Thank you for joining me today on Living in Midbloom. I hope you found this episode insightful, meaningful, and maybe it's given you something to think about. I invite you to share your positive reviews or ideas on topics you would like me to touch on by leaving your comments on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. We are all divine beings who just want to be seen, heard, and loved. Have a beautiful day.